And I'm absolutely delighted to have with me Martin Howe QC, a very distinguished EU lawyer who is perhaps the greatest expert in his field. So we can now look at the law with Martin as it relates to the Windsor Framework. You've been involved in producing the ERG paper, and you've come up with some really startling points. So I was saying at the beginning, the government has said 97% of the laws have gone. You say no laws have gone. Can you explain how that can be right?
Well, I can explain how what I say is right. I can't explain why it was ever said that 97% of laws have been removed from Northern Ireland, because looking at the legal texts, which are extremely complex, that is just not the case. Not a single European Union law that applies to Northern Ireland under the protocol is to be removed from Northern Ireland under the Windsor Framework.
So what do they mean when they say 97% laws? There must be something underpinning that. Government doesn't just make things up.
I honestly absolutely no idea where that 97% comes from. We do have an idea about why they're saying that some laws are being disapplied. They're not being disapplied from Northern Ireland. There's a limited number of EU laws which are disapplied from a special, if you like, channel for goods coming from Great Britain. And by no means all of them, but a chunk of them.
And is this the Green Lane?
That is the so-called Green Lane.
And the Green Lane will mean that there's free trade between Great Britain and Northern Ireland.
Well,
so that's a great success for the Prime Minister.
It would be if it were anything like a Green Lane of the kind you go through at an airport when you arrive, where you just sort of walk through with your suitcases and walk out the other end if you've got nothing to declare, and you don't have to fill in any forms or anything. No, this Green Lane is actually highly restricted. You have to register for it. You have this particular one, you have to have a registered establishment on a special list in Great Britain, which might be, say, a supermarket distribution warehouse, and then registered establishments at the other end which sell the goods to retail. So it's only, I mean, it's probably useful for supermarkets, for example, but it's not of general use for traders.
So if I set up a business to deliver Bath Oliver biscuits, which are now quite difficult to get, unfortunately, from GB to Northern Ireland, and I had a friend who ran a corner shop, could I take over to him 100 packets of Bath Oliver biscuits without making any declaration in a Green Lane?
No, you could not. You would have to register, he would have to register, you would have to put in an online declaration before you took the consignment under the scheme. You'd have to be a trusted trader, and if you were suspected of, heaven forfend, sending these Bath Oliver biscuits across the border into the Republic, you could have your trusted trader authorisation taken away.
And if I take them from London to Birmingham, that's fine. I don't need to do anything. I just have to be happy that the person will pay me on delivery.
Indeed. There are no formalities.
OK, so the Green Lane is not as green as we had hoped it would be. The laws haven't been removed. What about the emergency brake? Isn't that a good thing? Won't that lead to divergence, as I was asking Ms Widdicombe, so that EU law, not immediately, but over the course of years, ceases to apply in Northern Ireland because they increasingly use the brake?
I think that's very unlikely. I mean, the big thing to appreciate about this brake is that it doesn't allow Northern Ireland to do the same thing we can do in this country. Indeed, under the bill that you promoted, the retained EU law bill, which will allow European Union laws that we've carried over from our membership to be revised and reformed. And the problem is that process will go ahead. Northern Ireland will not be able to do it. People there can't vote to change these laws. And that will create divergence.
And if we diverge in GB, the laws that allow for the Green Lane, green as it is, are EU law, aren't they? They're not international treaty law. What difference does that make?
Well, that does make a very big difference. And in my view, it was a very, very poor negotiating decision, because what the EU, in effect, has offered to do is to create these special dispensations under EU law by passing regulations. The EU legislator will pass regulations which will apply directly, just like Acts of Parliament, no intervening process, but only in UK territory in Northern Ireland.
And who enforces these laws?
Those laws are completely under the control of the European Court of Justice and the Commission.
So we haven't got rid of the European Court of Justice, we haven't really got a green lane, and we haven't got the freedom for Northern Ireland that we were hoping for.
Well, I think it's particularly important to look at it from the point of view of Northern Ireland and businesses in Northern Ireland. Let's take this sort of green lane facility, where if you go through the green lane facility, certain EU laws don't apply to the goods you send from Great Britain. Now, that exception from EU law is expressly restricted to goods that come from Great Britain. Goods made in Northern Ireland are not allowed to take advantage of it. So that means Northern Ireland businesses won't be able to compete on an
still
even
under
basis.
EU law.
Yeah, they will.
Martin, thank you so much, and thank you for the amazing amount of work that you have done on this.